Thank you. Thank you for a nice introduction. Thank you guys for coming after party. That's always tough. I know that. So kudos to you. Let's make this work. So a little bit about the two books. They're linked at the end of the presentation as well. The black one been translated to Polish as Dokonali Scrum Master or something like that. So if you want to read it in Polish, that's also fine. Now, how we started. At the beginning of my journey, I was part of a team in the US working with a customer on site. And it was very individual culture. So when you show up there, nice people, I mean, they take me for lunches all the time, etc. They say, oh, you're here for just 7 months, so we'll take care of you and everything. All great. But from a working perspective, you end up in a cubicle like that tall. So when I stand up, I could see over those cubicles, there are people who cannot. And 2 by 2 meters around me, random managers all the day on some calls. No collaboration every week. You see officially, you see the team members. We have this 1 or 2 hours status, and that was about it. When I ask somebody like, hey, you've been mentioning something, do you know what's the name of that method or something? Like, can you help me, in other words? It was a big issue because she's not smart enough. She doesn't know her job. She's asking me for help. And then I did the opposite as well. I learned this is not the way how to work in this organization. So I stopped asking for help, of course, right away. I did the opposite. I helped somebody. It was like 5 minutes of my time setting her network properly. It actually saved her quite some time. So what she did, we were going for lunches every other day pretty much. So we spent quite a lot of time on those lunches. It was not like really working culture. It was quite easygoing corporation. But she still sent an email to 3 above managers saying how great it was for me that I spent 5 minutes of my time helping her to set the network, which saved her each day, I don't know, another 5 minutes. And I got a check as a thank you, $5 to Best Buy. Uh, isn't that great? So that was the background, right? When I started, it was like, wow. So this is how the big corporations looks like. The successful American, the best in the world. Interesting. And then we started Scrum one day. It was real fun. New process, new tools, stupid, silly way of working, of course. It was not such a big deal for me. I was used to collaborate from our Prague company, but it was a shock for those folks who spent 20 years in their cubicles. Never help anyone, never ask for help, never collaborate. Very interesting. They booked a meeting room for, at the beginning, 6 months. And they tell people, go away from your cubicle. You can still be there, read your emails, but you need to be working in this meeting room. And guess what? There were only half computers as a number of people, so you have to pair program. Real fun. Rotating pairs, having those retrospectives where, Americans, everything is great. So the first retrospective, no, it's all great, it's awesome, everything is perfect. And then my manager was visiting that week, joining that retrospective. So he was the first speaking non-American. So he said, well, I don't think it's actually great. I think actually this one thing sucks and this is not really working well. And then something changes. They actually start saying, oh, we agree with him. It doesn't work that well. So that was the beginning. After 7 months, I enjoyed the time, specifically the Scrum time. It was more fun to really work with people than be individual, right? Then I came back to Prague, and my manager at that time, he said, and now you have to be a Scrum Master. I was like, I don't want to be a Scrum Master. It's like, yeah, but you have to. You're the only one who ever seen Scrum from our company, right? 2005, long time ago. It's like, yeah, but I don't like Scrum. I thought I would, right? He said, I don't like it either, but you just started. So we actually make it a deal. I started. I said, okay, 3 months. He said, yes. And I keep my chair on the 3rd floor. He said, yes. No worries. No one would ever sit there. So I started. very funny. Follow the process, of course. Do Scrum, right? So my first sentence, I show up in front of my colleagues, good friends, by the way, collaborative company, as I told you, and say, hey, we're going to use this new product with new customer, and we're going to use Scrum. Isn't that great? And the first feedback was like, no, you forget it. We are not going to do that stuff. I was like, but we have to, right? The only thing I got in mind was like, yeah, we have to, right? And they were like, yeah, we know, but can we fake it? It's like, sure, I don't care, right? Do whatever you want, just make sure the customer haven't figured that out. And apparently they sent one American guy to be with us for a year, sitting in our office. And guess what? He keep asking, like, do you have the planning? Where can I join your retrospective? So we realized it's more difficult to fake it than do it. So we try to do it as best as we can, follow the process, do some tools exactly as we were described. And in about 6 months after that, what we realized, it's that silly, stupid American process is actually working. It allows us to shift to a place which we cannot even imagine. We were better. We thought we are the best team ever, of course. If you work for various international customers and you're helping them with their legacy systems, you have this aura of we are the best in the world, right? We didn't feel any problem. We didn't feel any need. But we could become better team with this stupid, silly process. Well, there must be something magical on it. And that was a time where I actually started deeping dive into like reading and going to some meetups, etc. And trying to figure out like, what is it? And it took quite a while. And I realized, okay, it's about mindset, culture, approach, perspectives, different way of thinking, right? You can call it various different ways. So that was a big realization. And then I thought, well, that's actually something which I really like to do. By the way, even that process, I actually realized it's more fun to deal with people than with code. So I never go back to that chair in the third floor. I gave it up sometime after and enjoy being a Scrum Master for a couple of years. And then, I realized my biggest job in myself is to pretty much say, I am agile. Can I say that? I'm the biggest agile enthusiast all around. So that was my sort of end goal. I guess I got there. If you see me at some of the classes, you will realize that that's why I'm living that thing. So it's a journey. And there is nothing wrong on starting at the beginning. It's just not what it helps you to be really successful. We were lucky. Many people, as we're going to explore, end up in this dark Scrum instead. So I was lucky enough. I just end up in some technical process type of Scrumish way of working. But we recovered. So 5 things. First segment you need to get is engaged culture. And imagine, I'll share a few stories from some unnamed organizations. So imagine big telco corporation. They've been trying to be agile, but they got single discipline skills, individuals, detailed positions, very detailed description, what you do. Individual performance was the key. Am I faster than somebody else? And how do we measure that? And I want to be promoted, so I can't really help other people. How that agile really looks like? Well, they also have middle management. My American colleagues often call that level frozen middle. So they got that frozen middle management. And they, guess what, didn't really like Scrum. They were afraid. They say, oh, does it mean I lose my job? Am I still needed when we create self-organizing teams? Guess what? Not really, right? So they figured it out real quickly. And the vice president, he really wanted to have that. He seen it somewhere. He understands to some extent, at least, what is it about. But he completely skipped that frozen middle part and say, just, guys, do it. They say, yes, of course, we do it to him. And to us, they pretty much say, oh, So you want a developer. So this guy, he is really super senior. We can give you 5% of him. And here she can get like 20%. And you can get 60% of her. Guess how lucky you are, 60% of one individual. Now, how it looked like when I show up, because the Scrum Masters were very demotivated. They asked me if I can help, so I show up. Daily Scrum. And those people were like saying, well, I didn't really do work yesterday on Scrum because I have no work now for Scrum. I was working on different things and I don't plan to do anything today either. So yeah, I guess I'm just here because I have to. It was a very fun evening, right? So we say, okay, what shall we do? You need to fix the root cause. The people were showing up because they have to. They were saying officially correct sentences, just the complete nonsense thing. So how can we change that? So we try to talk to those middle managers. They say, no, it's impossible. You can't get more than 5%. We need him. You have 60% deal with it. We can't help you. And then we escalate to the vice president. And then he said, oh, no, they need to help you. They promised me they will help you. Nothing changed. So we try to do different lobbying and different other stuff. Nothing really keep changing. Then eventually, after 6 months of that nightmare, what happened? Those managers were pushed to give us a little more. So they say, okay, we give you 50% of each individual. In the morning, you show up in this meeting room, you're going to be doing Scrum. In the afternoon, you're working for your manager. It started working a little bit and I gave up. I just said, like, I'm done with this environment. Like, really? This makes no sense. So just, I help you as much as I can, but I can't really make a difference. Now, it's not a completely bad story because it was a start. It was an ugly start. I think the people who were in it, like internals, they hated it. But at the end of the day, for that organization, long run, 10 years after, they're now having quite nice Scrum teams. It's just the beginning was a bit dark and ugly. But it's a journey, so eventually they move on. So how it should look like instead, right? No individuals, we have teams. The teams need to collaborate. And if you want to collaborate with anyone, and there is a trust prerequisite. We talked about it yesterday at some of the talks, right? Trust. Do we trust each other enough? And building trust takes time. Then openness, like open to different ideas and diversity in a way. So very often what we do when we start building Scrum teams, we start looking for similarly minded people. We believe we're going to be much more efficient. Yes, most likely temporarily, short term. But in the long run, you really need to get that diversity. You need to learn how to deal with different opinions and how to facilitate that collaboration in an efficient way. Transparency, that's scary. Specifically, if you don't have trust, then no one want to share anything. But if you're not transparent, how can you possibly collaborate? You won't, right? So I remember in our company, we got a manager who was like keeping all the information for himself only and very rarely sharing it to individual here, individual there. And guess what? Very often different information, conflicting information, because it makes him in charge. So when you start in this type of environment, raising a transparency, people freaks out and they say, oh, I'm losing the power. What shall I do? And even if that's not your case, there is another case. No, we can't share everything because people would be like lost in that many information. They trust them enough, they can choose what to read or not. So when we say like we want to open everything, every processes, all the finances as well, make it visible. No. People would be lost and they don't need to know. I mean, if they don't care, they don't read it. They don't look there, but if they need to know, they can always go and have a look. transparency. So I'm a really big fan of radical transparency. It makes everything so much easier. And if you have trust, transparency, then it's about failure very often. So I remember I've got a similar slide with a experiment mindset in a bank. And when I start talking about, you experiment, you inspect, you adapt, you learn from failures. And in order to be an experiment, only 2 out of 10 things gonna be successful, and you learn from the rest. You can see like in the audience. It's like, what's going on here? And then they told me like, no. We have this communication and values like we can never make any mistake. We are important finance organization. Very funny. So can you fail? What happens if you fail? Is it the opportunity for showing who's responsible, whose fault it is, blaming otherwise? Or is it an opportunity to say, yeah, there was something not going that well, so how can we learn from it? So are your organizations safe to fail or not? Because people will not take ownership if it's not safe to fail, if they feel threatened. And then there's a complicated thing, but at the end of the day, a lot of organizations, they start with a new process. We did the same, by the way. We started with pushing. You have to do Scrum. And of course, without that understanding, we were lucky it was just a technical process type of Scrum-ish. It was not dark. In many organizations, it's just dark. It makes no sense. So what we wanted to do was to start with changing the culture, the values, and through that, only then, after you change that culture, implement that process that supports it. Inside out, not outside in. Second, value driven. So imagine big, large automotive organization. Then they have individual silos, skills, systems. It's very difficult to build a car, of course. It's a tough job. They have projects, right? They deliver tasks. They focus on maximizing the velocity, estimates. That's all what matters. They got requirements there exactly prescribed. Maybe just that wheel in a machine doing whatever was described here to there. So when you start to talk with this environment, and I just got to talk about it 2 days ago, about value. What is the value? They say, we don't know. We don't really understand it. I mean, we have this technical task here to be delivered, but what is the value? We often don't even see. And it's impossible in our environment. It's too complex, too difficult. Very hard. So if you go to organizations, I used to be focusing most on teams and helping them to change the behavior, the mindset, the culture, the dynamics of their work. Now, when I go to organizations, it's shifted a little bit. That's a good sign. I'm now focusing on that value. I'm trying to work with product owners, the business people, and trying to help them to shift so we can actually deliver a value. In some organizations, it goes easier. In some, not that well, of course. Like that automotive, it's a typical, usual failure. Like, no, we don't even know what that value. It's impossible to tell, hey, there is a Tesla, for example. Oh, we don't like Tesla. Those are not a good cars. So, okay, well, yes, and there is a different way how to do it. Similarly, I was in a bank, right? And they also like say, we have those silos, technical, systems. It's very difficult to have a bank. It's critical. It's impossible. We have a mainframe, right? COBOL, and we can't change it. And it's like 20 years of development of those systems, or 30 or 50, or I don't even care. And guess what? I've just seen on the social media, yesterday a post from a CEO of one of the big Czech banks. His second sentence was said, we went through agile transformation, we redesigned our system, and it allows us to be, and I forgot his term, like a unique bank. It allows us to do things which we were not able to do before. For example, this, and that. So they really invested into changing the way how their systems are structured, redesign it. Is it possible? Yes. Was it cheap? No. Was it simple? Not at all. But it starts with the value. When I was in this particular organization with their first big attempt, not the small, tiny teams, they got many years of experimenting at the team level. But then they did a big bang shift, saying, we are shifting to agile, everybody. And it was a very tough year for all the banks in the Czech Republic. Specifically, there was something on the regulatory business that shifted, and they all feel the sense of urgency. We have to change, otherwise we might be out of market soon. So they all went to agile various different ways, usually using some big names, consultant companies with like little understanding. But I think all of them, they did a huge step for a corporation towards value, even if on the first look there was not really value driven, but it was much more value driven than before, towards teams. They restructure pretty much everybody. And then every year they did some shift. So are they on a journey? Yes. Is it ideal? No. Right. So how that looks like, what's the start if you want to address this perspective? Purpose. Why are we even here? So when you win a lottery, I often ask leadership teams, but also the others, when you win a lottery, would you be still coming to your work because you believe this is really important? We build this revolutionary bank here, or we build a new way how to develop cars. It doesn't really matter, right? Do we have this higher level purpose, which makes us stand up every day and say, hey, I'm here. And I'll be coming back because this is important. If you don't have it, and many organizations don't, if you ask people like around, like, yeah, I'm doing some Java work here. I don't care. Why? I don't even know. I never seen the customer, right? So the purpose, have it done. And then, of course, you need to have it communicated to everybody so they sort of understand it. What's the uniqueness on this organization? How are we different to all of the other organizations? Are we even different? Innovations. We talk about them, but companies are really bad at innovating. Therefore, if you look, 80% of organizations will not survive 10 years. So we need to learn how to innovate. That's part of it. And understanding the value is a prerequisite. You can't really innovate unless you really know where the value is. Priorities. This is one of my favorite slides because I've seen so many times people saying, those guys, the stakeholders, users, customers, I don't mind how they call them. They generate requirements. They tell us what to do. And all the people are smart enough to generate unlimited number. If you ask me what the car should have, I start building various different things. Everybody could be quite good at it. So they always generate a lot. And then what we try to have, a person, he would be not only saying like, yes, let's make it done, but most of the time that person will be pretty much saying no. So how do I recognize a good product owner in a company? How do I train product owners in organizations? At the very beginning, I just told them, hey, as a product owner, you need to be able to say, we're going to do this now and the rest later or never. And if you can say that later or never with a big smile on your face and enjoy it, then you're going to be a great product owner. And guess what happens? In some people, you see, that's yeah, I can imagine that. But I've been recently in an organization. Developers, they start laughing. Product owner, frozen face, like panic. And she didn't like me at all after that sentence because she believed those are requirements which has to be done. Not really. Those are assumptions, hypotheses, ideas, dreams. I intentionally ask organizations stop using the word requirement for those type of things and use a different word. But those are requirements. You can't. Well, really? Have you tried to challenge them? Have you ever tried to say no? Have you ever tried to come up with a different solution to their problem? Do you even know which problem are we trying to solve? So say no, prioritize. 80% of a value is only in 20% of functionality. 80% of value. That's what you're going to do now. And the rest later or never. And then this continuous delivery. I was with a team and we've been having this conversation about learn from failures, about delivering value, about inspecting, adapting, iterative, incremental way of working, those type of things. And the person was like thinking, but you can't do it. You have to have an exact plan because you need to think it over. Otherwise, it's too expensive to fail. And somebody else was saying him, no. The worst thing which can ever happen was like fail a sprint. It's a week or two. So what? It was like two different words. Week or two failure because we deliver the value every 2 weeks or every week or frequently. Continuous sort of thing. Step by step, one by one, getting the feedback, learning from mistakes. Can you do it? Well, I guess you can if you stop looking at people as individual contributors with one skill and start looking at people as creative, innovative, smart individuals who can actually gather together and solve a problem, deliver the value together. Customers. Now, how many of you are meeting customers face to face, physically, regularly? Really? That's nice. About 10 of you maximum. So when I was working for that US company, that was something they did real well. So we were doing software for pacemakers and defibrillators. It's kind of fun, if you make their back patient feel bad, so no bugs, high quality, very regulated environment. But we were actually going every now and then to the hospital for implant. You stay in a corner of that room with all that, stuff on yourself, watching the physicians cutting the body, doing the implant. You were meeting with patients, big fairs, showing on the display all the old and newer and newest pacemakers, defibrillators. It was interesting. And patients coming, they have the same story always. Well, I was, for example, running a marathon, picture. Then I got a heart problem, laying on a bed, picture. Now I have a pacemaker, running the marathon again, picture, right? But those emotions, very important. Because we are actually saving people's lives. That was the purpose. So there was like no way we would sacrifice the quality after seeing the real people who were having that pacemaker. Now, I said learning from mistakes. So imagine a small organization. They were doing the body shop. They believe it's all to do the product. Well, let's go one step back. They were doing body shopping for banks, telco companies. And every now and then, if you do body shop, you have some people who don't have work for customers. They have nothing to do. So they thought, let's use their time and let's build a product. The product is great. It's better than body shopping because people are paying even if you're not doing anything. It's simple. It's easy. Let's do that. They got idea and they believe it's all about delivery. So they build a detailed requirement. They have a fixed scope to be delivered. They got somebody who was like business analyst, proxy product owner, person who was trying to make sure that we cover everything which needs to be done, but it was more technical and detailed and then real business value driven. When I showed up there, because they failed actually. First year, they deliver product which was actually well functioning, but the customer didn't buy it. Then they got a new development manager. He said, we're going to do it agile because we don't want to fail again. And they say, we have a backlog already. So they tell me, can you help us with our backlog? I said, sure, of course. And then you see that mess of these detailed ideas and them ready to deliver, hire 5 extra people to deliver that product fast. So I started asking the questions about that purpose, about the customer. For whom are you building it? What's the value? Who are the customers? And guess what? They didn't know who are the customers either. So we got stuck. After an hour, I offered that. It was like small company. So you got the owner of the company who was sort of sponsoring. You got that so-called product owner, proxy person. You got some developers there. You got the development director. They have no idea. So I said, well, you have some questions to answer. Go, think about it, do some more market research or whatever, and I'll come back. That's okay. I live nearby. I can just, I don't charge you anything extra. I'll just show up another day. And the owner of the company, he's like, no. If we can't answer those questions, why are we even here? So we continued. It was one of the worst experiences ever because I thought they already spent 1 year of development, which they actually could have. The owner could have used it and built a new house or buy a new car. He can distribute it to those employees and they can have some nice extra money. They actually wasted it. So I thought, let's not let them waste another year, which would be even more expensive if they plan to hire 5 individuals. But I keep asking those questions. It was one of the worst days because you have to show them they have no clue what they are doing. Not a nice message. I think it was one of the worst days they remember as well. After 2 weeks, they finally sent me a message saying, like, we decided not to invest into a product. And I think I did them a very good service because I saved them quite a lot of money. They realized maybe we should just invest our time into finding, is it working or not? Into finding more, how about this? It was fine? Okay, then I keep it here. Okay. Yeah. Okay, can you hear? No, I guess it will work. Okay. So hard time sometimes to deliver this message. So what we did, we actually co-create things. We invited, eventually we build a trust, not only internally as a team, but we also build the trust with our customers. So we actually make it super transparent. They can see everything. They can look into the tools. We even have a cameras time to time, like they can, connect to the camera and have a look who is sitting there and talk. It was 2005. The internet was not as strong as nowadays. It was not that normal. So they really bought something which was not that common, right? But we co-create. We actually take them as partners. We get out of that delivery mindset. We deliver to somebody who ordered something. No, we co-create what we need to achieve and then try to empathize, try to understand and build it together. Very interesting. It has some downsides. We may build such a strong relationship with our customers that some people at our company were having stronger relationship with the customer than with the home company. We need to address that a bit later. But, do it together. Take them as partners. It's about feeling, it's about hearing, it's about doing. Speaking of banks, right? It's really funny. You go to the headquarters and a ground floor, they got a branch for employees, at least in that bank, but it's quite common, right? So you walk up, talk to the team, and then ask them, hey, how many of you, because you're building the system those ladies are using, how many of you have been there and watch how they use it? Therefore, you have this branch here, right? In the ground floor. And they look at me, it was like saying, no, it never came to our mind. Oh, real funny, right? So I say, yeah, you have it fast. I say, yeah, exactly. But we never thought about it. Another story, I've been coaching a team and we talk about something about delivery, etc. And they say, oh, we just got the launch. They were doing systems for the cashiers. It's some big, like, closing company. And it was interesting. They say, you should see what happened. There were such long queues. So we actually need to take it back in the middle of a day. So what happened next? They said, well, we actually went and watched how those ladies are using our system, and we, for the first time ever, realized like what the mistakes were done. Somebody just wrote detailed requirements, but they never seen the customer. And then this picture, that's the most difficult. Incremental, iterative. Now it seems a bit like a waste for many organizations. Like that automotive company I mentioned here before. If you try to talk with them about this, they say, no, it's a waste. If you know you build a plane, you need to build it from scratch. You don't waste your money building something which is very different. Of course, and they're right. The problem is how many times you really know what you need to build. You know what you need to achieve, but how? And it's very difficult because if you knew you would be the most successful organization, you would just do it like this. But we very often don't know what needs to be done. Speaking of my books, right? I know that my first book is selling better than my second book. But I don't really know what I have to do to change that. So I'm experimenting, trying different things. And speaking at the conferences is one of my many experiments. Maybe if I show up on a stage and they like me talking, they buy a book. Maybe not, right? So who knows? Keep trying. That's not the only way I speak at the conferences. I like to network with people and talk to them. So that's my way of learning as well. But anyway, incremental. It's not a waste in a complex world. Now, how many of you are living in a business environment where you know exactly what needs to be done? You plan it, you deliver it, and it is the correct, the right version. How many of you failure in that space? Usually it's more than 3 people. So that's what happened at my classes when I ask. Actually, the more hardware companies shows up or candidates from hardware companies shows up, the more they are saying, no, 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 we know exactly. Interesting thing. The hiring managers I teach, when I have a leadership team, even from a hardware company, and ask this question, they say, no, no, we don't know, really. I mean, they do know because we give them the individual detailed tasks, so they understand the task to be done. But from a company perspective, it's still unpredictable. It's complex. It's hard to figure out. It's hard to test as well. It doesn't have the simple, like a website has a simple feedback loop. You measure how many people click on that button. Selling my book is not that way. Hardware is even worse, of course. Right? So, incremental. It is expensive if you know exactly what needs to be done. If you know it, do it. But if you don't, it's better to test and try small iterations and then eventually figure that out. Adaptive operations. So imagine a small service organization. They were saying, we are agile. We are using Scrum. But they still have yearly fixed budgets, fixed fixed plans. I would not even call it strategic. The value was sort of weak and awkward. And defined so-called business cases. But when I started to talk about value, it was sort of difficult. When I started to talk with their finance director about what's so magical on yearly budgets, like, we are flexible, we want to iterate with a strategy. So no, 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 no. They have to have the basics right. When they learn how to do the budgeting properly, then we can talk about rolling budgets, but not before. It's like, and I did my best. I remember one day, And there was a time where I actually realized if I want to change somebody's like mindset perspective and show them something, I need to understand them more. I understand the developers. I was one of them, at least to some extent, but I didn't really understand the finance people. And so I thought, let's spend more time. So I was using every single opportunity to go for lunch, for dinner with that person. I remember we've been in London. We were on a dinner talking about some agile stuff. And then when we were walking back to the hotel, he said, I still don't understand what is this agile really about. After 2 years of me talking to him, I was like, I'm done. He didn't mean it that way, but I was like, fuck, what am I supposed to do now? So he could take a deep breath, didn't say anything, and try to forget on it. So very interesting. When that service organization tried to do experiment, they learned some language, right? If you try to be agile, you learn some language. Everybody talking about experiments. So they tried to do experiment. They developed a full program. It took them about a year, maybe a year and a half to create it. Then they launch it and call it experiment. Now people around ask, like, okay, it's an experiment. How do you know that experiment is successful? How do you measure it? What do you want to achieve at the end? What do you would call success? I don't know. 20 people use it, 10 millions people use it, or what? How the success of this experiment looks like? Zero answer. And we still got that so-called experiment 3 years after. And then it went through some refactoring, and it was not an experiment anymore. It was the real product, but there was like no real difference. So that's still the fixed plans, aim for perfection. Now, if you want to work with organizations, the best metaphor I came up with, I steal it from Steve Denning, by the way, so all the credit to him. Traditional organization is this big tanker boat. Agile organizations is more like a flotilla of small boats. The big tanker boat is not wrong. It's fast, it's stable, it's awesome if you know exactly where you want to go. But if you don't, if you need to change based on circumstances, it's not very flexible, right? Now, how many of you, well, no, sorry, before that, while the flotilla of small boats is very flexible, sometimes they do some mistakes, but they help each other. They make their own decision. They have a much higher level of autonomy. They are more creative. Now, how many of you would have an organization which is closer to the tanker? Not that many. How many of you would have an organization which is closer to the flotilla of small boats? Much less. About 20. So what we try to do eventually at our organization, I was a Scrum Master for a couple of years, and then our owners changed, and I got the opportunity to shift the entire organization, to change the way how we operate. From that tanker-ish, small little boat still, but it was centralized, to decentralized. So we come up with a flat structure. We came up with team-oriented, higher level of autonomy, value-driven mindset. We built that. Now, sometimes people say like, yeah, but how do they know where to go? Of course, there are prerequisites. The purpose, we talk about it. Unless there is a strong enough purpose, they go to various different locations. So that organization, the service organization, they believe they are agile, but they are not, right? Those guys, they build this structure. They say we want to be a flat organization. So we have teams, no managers. We did that as well. But what they were missing was the understanding of a customer, understanding of the value, and understanding of the purpose. And then what happened? Not a big organization. They got about 7 teams. And each team was like believing we know what the purpose is. We know why we are here. We understand it. We are ready to take ownership. It was given to us, so let's take it and do our best. They came up with their own tasks. And they believe those tasks are the right ones to solve some sort of problem. The problem was that each of those teams have a different idea what is the vision, different idea what needs to be done. It was very difficult to give them even a feedback. They received that feedback, and they said, no, you don't understand. This is the right thing to be done. It was worse than that one. I love those type of structures. But unless you have a strong sense of the purpose and common understanding of it, don't go there. You create a mess, chaos completely, and a lot of demotivation. So this small organization went through very, very hierarchical organization, 40 people, by the way, at that time. And those 40 people got 3 senior vice presidents, some vice presidents before, senior managers, and you can start counting number of people. There were, of course, vice presidents with no employees below, but they still got a title, and the title was everything. A lot of people left at that time eventually. So then when we got more agile, leadership, and they built that. And eventually it created a lot of friction and demotivation, so some people left as well. And it was a time for another experiment, but this time starting from the purpose, starting from the vision, building some sort of strategic direction. Interesting. We'll see how that's gonna go. I'm still looking at that organization and see what happened next. Learning from mistakes. They definitely learned from mistakes. That was a good thing. So structure, right? Very often people like to have it defined. We need to know how the processes are. We need to exactly understand who is individually responsible. Or maybe not. Maybe it's just a network of self-managing teams, the flotilla of those boats. Of course, it's good to have a transparency to know where and why everybody is going. You need to have the strong purpose. But do you have to have everything defined? Not really, right? And here is why not. Because all those strategies should be sort of adaptive. Again, like traditionally, you create those big plans and everything, or those canvases. I mean, do them. It's an interesting exercise, but then be ready to change it. So what we try to achieve was like measure something, do something, measure something, right? And then evaluate, and then act. Do a tiny little change, improve it, and then again measure and check. So for example, with this small service organization, there was a problem that the motivation coming from various different things. So we start to have one organizational KPI saying, or OKR if you wish, saying employee engagement, right? Employee NPS. And they were using a tool which was generating those type of screens and measuring it once per year. And once per year, we compared the difference and then try to figure out what's happening and try to act upon that. It was usually done in December where everybody was stressed out, and evaluated in January where everybody was relaxed again and it was not that busy. And they say, oh no, I was stressed, but it's not applicable anymore. I don't want to do anything about it. And then for the entire year, we got quiet time. So what they did eventually, they say, okay, we want to learn from things much faster. So we want to measure. They bought a tool which allows them to send one question each week to everybody. And they just click or sometimes answer. It was like less than a minute, of course, few seconds. And they got a direct feedback. What's going on? It was interesting. At a certain point of a time, the CEO was leaving. Guess what happened? We all thought it's going to drop. It actually increased. That was the most surprising measures. They were happy that that person is leaving to some extent. Relieved, I guess. Or it was not a bad CEO, it was just a mess with that strategy, with that value decision. Right? Interesting stuff. So can you adapt your strategies? Can you measure things? And once you measure, whatever you measure, how do you know if it's a good thing or a bad thing? Or do you know if it's a good thing or a bad thing? And do you know what you're going to do? Because measuring, so many organizations are measuring something and then they never do anything. It's dropping. Yeah, it's bad, it's bad. That's it, right? Let's close our eyes and forget about it. So the more frequently you do that loop, the better. On a strategic level as well, right? Now, my favorite, budgeting, right? I never really understood what is so important on those year cycles. Like, why from January to December? Or some companies shifted that, but what's so important on a year? Get rid of those budgets, right? Have a rolling things. Like, it's good to have a sense, like, are we getting enough money? Is our business growing? It's more the previous picture, having some OKRs, maybe. And this one, fixing things. I was working in outsourcing for years, and we didn't have that. Of course, we have a sense about our finances because you have certain number of employees. They cost you something. You have a building that costs you something, right? It's a good idea for a business owner of the company, I mean, to have a sense about how is it going. And we got certain clients who are paying with certain margin. Do we know, can we plan if we're gonna hire 5%, 10%, 20% or fire? No, we have actually no clue. Because the customers in outsourcing, they don't tell you usually we're gonna be doubling your requests. And even if they tell, it's not true very often. So we actually learn how to be very flexible with it. And every month we were sort of looking into those indicators. And every month we were sort of saying, okay, are we good or not? At a certain point of time, there was a crisis and we lost quite a lot of customers at that time temporarily, or at least narrowed down. And we were in front of a very difficult decision. Are we going to lay off people, like 20%-ish? Or are we just going to save money somewhere else because we already got indicators that in 6 months from now it's going to grow up? Was it difficult specifically for the owners of the company? But eventually they said, okay, let's save some money. So we get rid of all the bonuses at that time. We said there is no way you can get any raise right now. And we save this and this and that. It was interesting when I announced it to people, because I was the HR director at that time as well. They came back, some of them, and say, well, thank you for like not laying off my colleagues or me. And I wanted to tell you that I have enough money. So if you need to save somewhere, I can also go down with my salary. I was like, wow. Can you imagine people would be telling you they can go down with their salary and offering it? We said no at that time. And we were lucky enough, so it picked up. It was interesting, right? So that's, again, but if you have a very different culture, very different mindset, very different values, then of course it will not be possible because they would go angry and it will not really work. So you need to start, right? This is I have it here as one of the last things for a reason, because you need to have those other first before you start changing that structure and operations. And last aspect here, leadership, right? Going back to a company where I worked, I told you I was a director of HR. I was also director of engineering, the biggest department. If you have those two, you can change everything. It was real cool. Flat organization, no managers almost. But some of our departments at the time where I took over were very top-down. We got very autocratic people who were micromanaging, very ugly. It was a very difficult shift for those pieces of organization because they transformed at the same time. We got a very strong culture in half of our organization, so actually we sustained that. It was bigger already, so it just took over. One thing I learned, if I want to achieve some change, I need to be authentic. I need to be willing to admit some mistakes. I need to be saying, I'm here with you. I'm also on that change journey with you. So when I was first time promoted, I was promoted because I was the expert. I know better than the others how to code, so I can teach them, mentor them, help them, grow them. Next time, when I was a Scrum Master, beginning Scrum Master, right? When I started the journey, I thought like, let's give them some goals, some autonomy. We have the backlog, right, etc. So it was more like achiever. Give an objective and let them to figure that out. step back a little bit. After that, when I took over the entire department, I thought, well, maybe it's a time to behave as a catalyst. So really step back. My only job is to create an environment where they can be successful, where they can help each other, where they can become leaders. So when I say leaders, it's not the managers. We need leaders in organizations. We need people who are ready to take ownership and responsibility and say, hey, I'm going to achieve this. And will you help me? Because I think this is really important. And the people start forming those groups. So, but authenticity is the most important. What I see in some organizations, I see like the telco company I was talking about, the vice president, he got an idea, he got a purpose, everything, but he was not very authentic. He actually delegated to some project managers. He relabeled to scrum masters. They were trying their best, but he was not part of that change. So it starts with you. Be part of that change. Build relationships. I realize that it doesn't matter what the problem is. All what matters is, do people have a good enough relationships together? And if they do, they figure out the solution. But if they don't, of course, I'm not going to work with that person because we have this lack of trust or issues, and I don't think he's good enough for relationships. Now, how many organizations are willing to invest in it? So I was working with one small service organization, that one from a previous slide. And I spent most of my time building relationships. It helped them tremendously. Being a good team together, trusting each other, being willing to share these agreements. Like, I don't think that's a good idea because of this. And they say, oh, really? Tell me more about it. I thought it's great, but maybe not. So those type of conversations, like on a difficult topics, start to happen. They become much more efficient, productive, meaningful. And then every year we were thinking, shall we invest more into our relationships? Guess what they say? No, we are a great team already. We don't need to. It's never ending. Growth. There's a difference. I'm smart, or I can learn. There is nothing I cannot learn if I practice enough. Certain things, and if it's important for me enough. It's one of those other things. Is it important for you to learn that? Can I skateboard? No, I would love to, but is it important for me? No. So I didn't really practice. I mean, I tried. I can ride on very slow and don't fall down, but that's about it. It was more important for me to learn snowboarding. So I actually eventually did. Am I best? No, but I'm good enough, right? So can you learn? And can you build that culture of learning at your organization? It starts with helpfulness. What do you need? So we start asking like, okay, well, there is a problem. Anyone willing to take it? And we got a couple volunteers because that was our culture. And then we always ask, okay, what do you need from us? How can we help you to get there? And sometimes I just ask, can I go to a class? Can I buy a book? Or can you introduce me to that person? Maybe at the university, you know him. We would like to, have a chat. Maybe he can help us. Sure, right? So ask for help, offer a help. That's where it all starts. Leadership, right? I already said, expert. I know how to solve things. I'm the best. I set the goals, or I create a space. But you need to be patient enough. We are trained through the years of our education systems and everything else. Solve the problem, solve the problem, solve the problem. Or maybe not. I need to learn various different things. I actually need to learn that there are things where I believe I'm an expert and I know exactly what the solution should be. And then if I say nothing and just create a space where they can come up with their own idea. Very often, to my biggest surprise, they come up with a better idea than I got in mind. And I thought I am the expert, I know best. Ha. And it happened first time, you say it's an exception. Next time, another exception. Next time, that's a pattern. So maybe I should be better at acting as a catalyst than always jumping in with my own ideas. And that needs a lot of patience and a lot of quietness, a lot of self-awareness. Is it really needed? So, but now, before I say something in some environments in the business, I often ask myself, okay, so do I really have to say it? And what happens if I don't say it? And guess what? Very often I become quiet because I realize nothing will happen. Somebody else will say it, and maybe that's better for the team. Now, two summary slides. So how many of you are in the red? Meaning you have a group of individuals individually allocating things, delivery mindset, project focus, fixed plans and budgets, managers as experts or leaders as experts because they know better. How many of you are the green type of environment? You have teams, not a group of individuals anymore, but teams with same goal, shared goal, regular feedback loops through which you learn, system focus, not just project, but systems, bigger entities, experimenting mindset, achiever leaders as a majority of your organization. And how many of you would be in a blue part here? Having a network or self-managing teams, co-creation of things, whole product focus, adaptive strategies, and catalyst leadership. Now, you would have a mixture of all in every organization, of course, but it's good to think about where is the majority of our organization. And of course, you're going to be all colors, I guess, most of you, right? But again, where are we here? Where are we here? Where are we here? And once you have that awareness, where are we? Then the second question is always, okay, where do we want to be? In 6 months from now, in 1 year from now, in 5 years from now? And then what can we do? That's what the business agility is about. Get awareness. And it starts with a feedback, right? So without that awareness, without that feedback, we can't really move on. Experiment. There is no one way. Try different things. Just because you've been always doing it this way, well, try to challenge it and try something different. Maybe it's going to be more fun. Maybe you're going to get much better results. Maybe you learned something. And the last one, resiliency. Become ready to whatever future brings. So when people ask me, what is agile organization? What is the business agility? How do we know if we are agile? So my answer usually is, are you ready to whatever future brings? Thank you very much. You can connect with me over